In today's conversation, we're talking to Jim Mullane. Jim created one of the largest nonfiction book communities with over 200,000 members. It's called Get Better with Books. What a great title. He's creating content through Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, bringing you the best bites from the best nonfiction books in the world. We discover how he built this account as a side hustle. We go into how he's developed collaborations with some of his favorite authors, why all self-help content might not be that helpful, and we go deep into some principles he's learned from some of his favorite nonfiction books and authors. My name is Tom Boyd, and this is the show that discovers how storytellers are building brands online, from the creative process to the mental frameworks to monetization strategies. I'm fascinated how these individuals are building brands around their individualities, and in this show we learn what's working so you can apply that to your mission. If you're in the mood to give a review, hit the Apple Podcast link, say whatever is on your mind, good or bad, it is all welcome. I hear it helps with the algorithm, and we're all about the algorithm here, guys. All right, enough about me. Let's get into the show. All right, so check it out. So Jim, welcome to the show.
Tom, thanks for having me.
Of course, man. So I have a question. So if you're at a barbecue and someone comes up and like, "Hey, man, I heard you make videos for the internet." Tell me what that's all about. You know, it's kind of a triggering question. It's loaded, but can you tell me how you would respond to that person that asked that question at a barbecue?
Well, first of all, I think it depends on who it is. You know, if it's like a grandparent, I'm just like, I make videos about books. And they're like, oh, sweetie, that's nice. And that's usually it. But if it's like someone who's my age and maybe someone who might be interested in books, I said, hey, like I started this digital community that's focused around people who like reading nonfiction books. That's really the simplest way to describe it.
Amazing. Yeah, and let's imagine this person is someone that you want to keep the conversation going. I have canned responses myself for people that, you know, I don't really want to keep the conversation going with, you know, because it doesn't really it won't really sit with them that well. Like, oh wait, what you do what for who? They just don't get it. But I love that approach. Now, when did you start this community?
I started it back in May 2018. It was just something that was really a passion project for me. So I've always been interested in photography. I've always been a book reader. And, you know, I was at this point in my career, you know, probably like 5 years ago, I was like, shit, my day job is kind of boring. I'm looking for a little bit more creative fulfillment in my life. And I was like, what if I start a blog or start, you know, a specific page? And it took me a little while to figure out what I wanted to do. And I almost just like audited my interests, and I'm like, what am I interested in? What do I spend most of my free time doing? And the answer was simple. I was like, I do a lot of photography, and I take pictures of my wife and landscape and shit like that. And I read a lot of books. Mm-hmm. So I thought about what if there's a way that I could combine the two, and Instagram was a great medium to do that because it's visually based. And that's really all it was. I just wanted to start a page where I could share the books that I was reading, but take pictures take nice pictures of books is really what it started as.
Interesting. So it started also as more of like a creative outlet. It was something 100%. Where you were like, you know, my day job isn't really filling up my cup so much. Yeah. I'm looking for something that can really get me excited. Was there any part of you where like, I want to eventually monetize this, or was it totally a passion project?
It was totally a passion project. You know, I did not have any expectation for it. I wasn't thinking like, hey, I'm going to turn this into a business, you know, because I didn't know what the reception was going to be. I didn't know that people were going to have such a positive response to pictures of books. And I initially thought this is like a nerdy thing, you know, who reads books and who's this interested in books. But turns out that there are a lot of people.
And today it's one of the largest nonfiction communities on the internet.
Yep. Yeah,
that's pretty rad. So I want to talk about like how you went from that, you know, starting it day one to getting it to the point where you are today. Mm-hmm. At what point were you like, oh, there might be something more here?
I think it was after about a year. So I started from zero, and to be completely honest, when I started the page, I didn't go into it thinking like, I'm not going to care about this. Like I'm I'm someone who's proud of my work. I take a lot of pride in what I showcase to the world. So I wanted to do it as best as I could. So I did a lot of research on how to grow an Instagram account. There's a lot of YouTube videos back in 2018. So there was a format and there was a structure around how I wanted to create content. But it was after about a year where I'd grown the page to about 75,000 followers in a year. And I was like, there might be something here. It's consistently growing. It's 100% organic. I'm not doing any paid advertising. It's just all through, getting on the explore page and reaching new people. And that was around the point where authors and publishers started reaching out to me, and they were saying like, "Yo, can I promote my book on your page?" So without even trying, I started making some money from this, and that's around the time where I'm like, is this something that could be bigger? Is there an advertising play here? Is there an opportunity for me to, maybe sell to the community? So it was really after about a year that I said I might have something here.
Okay. So it was sort of, audience first. It was like, let's get some traction. And then these organic opportunities started showing up. Mm-hmm. So the first year, was it all photos, or were you doing any video at that time?
It was really all photos, and I wasn't doing a lot of video reviews. It was something that I was really specific about how I want to differentiate my account. I went into it thinking I want to make my page different than what I see out there available. Number one, I saw a big gap in nonfiction books. I did a lot of research before I started my page, and a lot of them were based on young adult books, fiction books. These pages were run by women, so I thought, well, I'm not a woman. I don't read young adult novels. I read nonfiction and business books and personal finance books, and maybe there's a market for that. So I really wanted to separate myself from that. But it was all pictures to start.
How important was it at the beginning for you to choose something that you were truly curious about?
I think that was the lifeblood of starting the account, but more importantly, maintaining the account. Because you know this very well as well. With the content creation process, it's mundane, it's boring a lot of times, and to force yourself to consistently show up and consistently create content about stuff that you're not even that interested in, it will make it so much harder to grow an audience. So for me, like, I've always been interested in books. I love reading books, and I love talking about books to people who share the same enthusiasm. So that just made it so much easier going into it, thinking like, it doesn't feel like work. This is a hobby for me, and it's a hobby that I truly enjoy doing, and it just made the content creation process that much more easier.
Yeah, so part of it is like, this is sort of the metric that I use for like what kind of direction you want to go with your content. When people ask me, I'm like, what truly energizes you in conversations with friends? Mm-hmm. For me, a lot of it is, people would come to me and say, hey, like, whenever I'm done talking to you, I feel like I want to go make something. And mm-hmm. I was like, oh, maybe I can, I really enjoy doing that too. And it's having that effect. And I'm assuming that in conversations, you were just like, if someone brought up like a book that you read, you probably felt that enthusiasm. And
absolutely.
And that's so important, especially if you have a daytime job and it's like a side thing, because after the day job, you're a little drained, but this thing has to be exciting for you if it's going to be stacked on top of a day job. For sure.
Yeah. And I was that person that people were like, yo, I'm looking for a good book. And I was that dude that people were like, yo, I'm looking for a good book. Give me a couple recommendations. And I still am, but it helped, at least having a core identity, something where this brand, Get Better with Books brand, was also an identity that I shared personally.
Yes.
And that just it made the content, I feel like, that much more authentic, because it's like, this is an extension of who I am personally.
Did you always have the same name, Get Better with Books?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I wanted to make it very indicative. And this is, again, back to my research before I started the account. Like, I wanted the name of the account or the name of the brand to be almost common sense. Someone who comes to my page, they see the name, they see the bio, or they see, my first 9 pictures of the grid. They know exactly what my content is about. So, mm-hmm. If you vibe with that, you're going to know what to expect.
Yeah, I actually feel the same way about in the process of naming this podcast. I'm doing a lot of research right now, and the name that I've chosen, it's like kind of something that I like it. I don't love it. Like I feel like bonus footage. If I called it bonus footage, it'd be cooler. But I've chosen to call it for right now. Creators are brands. And the point being is when someone's scrolling, I want people to know exactly what I stand for. And it's like creators building all like these communities online. And I feel like that phrase piques curiosity for people to want to know more. And I feel like some people, when they're naming stuff, they can try to be too cool or too cute, but it's a crowded internet and you have to get right to the core to get people's attention from the jump. Now, in that first year when you were building the Instagram, what were some things that you went from 0 to 75,000 pretty quickly? What were some things that you were learning in those YouTube videos that you applied and you saw had success on your channel?
So there were a couple things. Number one was the content upload schedule needed to be daily. So I went into it knowing that, hey, if I want to grow this community, I want to show them that you're going to get new content every single day. So I wanted to enforce that I wanted to provide as much value on a daily basis. So daily uploads. Number two was that, and this is a combination of the photography background that I had, the photos I wanted to make sure were high quality content. Like Instagram is a visual platform. So I wanted to make sure, pictures of books, they're not really that appealing, but if I can format this or if I can showcase it in an appealing way, it's a crisp photo, it's got a nice background, it's got the blurry background, something that pops on Instagram. I think the whole goal is to get someone who's scrolling and to stop on the picture. Like that was a mindset. It's like post content that's valuable, but it's visually appealing. But number three, there was a lot of research around focusing on a niche, but embedding yourself in that niche. So following similar accounts, being social with them, comment, like show love,
show up, totally.
Like that's really all it was, is embedding myself within that community and showing up daily.
Yeah. Okay. So that first year you get 75,000. You said people started to reach out to you. Is there anyone that you can say that you were like kind of like a bit starstruck by, because you're big into the book world? I mean, listen, like it's funny, man. I'm big into nonfiction myself too, and if I like saw an author, like if I saw like Seth Godin like at the coffee shop, I would be a little fanboy. I'd have to hold it in a little bit.
So there was one experience where I was probably a little over a year in, and one author in particular that I've been a fan of for a while, Robin Sharma. He's the author of 5 a.m. Club. He's someone who I posted pretty consistently about my page, and he ended up DMing me on the account, and he was just like, "Hey man, like I just want to say I appreciate you showcasing and supporting my book, and I really appreciate it." He wasn't saying like, "Hey, like let's collab." He just like sent me a very thoughtful
appreciation,
just like it was that, and I was just like, wow. That's such an authentic message, but it's also someone that I look up to in a sense that he's a very successful author. So just seeing that, it was like a little bit of a sense of validation on my part. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. I'm
going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I think that you do a good job. Like all of these authors, they're creating products essentially.
Yeah.
And you are basically helping them promote them. Like,
right.
And you're making their brand. Someone else might have said this, but it's like value-based communication, where it's you like on your own, your permission, without their permission, you're just providing value. And as a result, it makes them want to communicate with you and just say, hey, thank you. And there's something that happens on the internet where, you might do that 10 times and then one of the people reach out and you develop this relationship with them. And it leads to more of the same. Now, in one of your videos, you say this quote, and I think it lines up well with sort of your approach, and I want you to kind of go further into it and how this quote might relate to your content. You said, if you're pointed in the wrong direction, it doesn't matter how fast you're traveling. And I think that was a quote from one of the books that you read, but you did a lot of research beforehand. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm just going to like start experimenting. You experimented, but with a direction and with a goal. So how does that quote, if you're pointed in the wrong direction, it doesn't matter how fast you're traveling, relate to how you approach your content?
So that's actually really relevant because before I started the Get Better with Books page, I started a different brand that completely fizzled out and crashed and burned within the first 3 months. So I started this digital brand around recreational marijuana products. So like I was at the stage where you're starting to see the legalization of pot, and you're like, okay, maybe there's commercial aspects to this. So there was something there. So I started something talking about different products around the legalization of marijuana, and it didn't vibe with me. I didn't have a whole lot of impact on the community. I didn't buy into it. So to your point about that quote, that wasn't a direction that I wanted to pursue. Yep. And I knew that quite quickly, and that's kind of like why it fizzled out. But to the Get Better with Books brands, the direction itself was something that I received a lot of positive feedback from the people who were following my account. A lot of people were just like, dude, I haven't read books for many years, and you inspire me to pick up books again. And it's just like little messages like that, little pieces of validation let me know that this is the right direction, because it is positively impacting people's lives. And I think at the end of the day, that's been my number one focus about this account, is to make sure that I'm providing value to people's lives by recommending quality books that will impact people's lives. And I think that's really been my mission since day one. And I think that's part of the reason why it's grown, because I really haven't been selling anything. It's back to your point about like the value, back to the whole Gary V, the jab, 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 right hook. For the first 2.5 years, it's been all jabs.
Nothing but jabs.
I haven't been selling anything. And I think a lot of people really appreciated that, because like I'm not out here selling merch, or I'm not out here, doing all this stuff, which I'm getting into now. I got some hooks coming, but I think people really appreciate that this just wasn't a big sales pitch.
Totally. And so it's funny, man. I am big into self-development content. I love it. I eat it up. I got shelves. I'm the guy in my circle where people reach out and say, what book can I have? What suggestions you have? I eat them up, and it's funny. There's this stigma too. Like even when I was getting into them at the beginning, like in certain friend groups, oh, you're into that self-help like crap. You're into that woo-woo. There's a stigma that it's like the world is like shifty, that it's scammy. But I know from experience, the first one I got was like it was the Success Principles by Jack Canfield. I still have it up there, and I have stuff written in there that like came true when it came to like the manifestations and like setting your intentions, and like a lot of that was the first time I learned the rule of you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and like that shifted. I started looking at everyone. I was like, I'm the average of this. You know what I'm saying? And I was able to get like so I'm curious. I still have a weird time, like totally not a weird time, but I still feel like there's this stigma around self-development books, like it's this woo-woo world. And I know for a fact that it's, depending on who you are, I mean, I've found a lot of value in it. How do you respond when people say like, oh, you're into that crap?
It's just almost like a reflection of themselves, like if you're a skeptical person, if you don't believe that you have the opportunity to grow as an individual, there's a great book by Carol Dweck called Mindset, and there's 2 factions. There's people with a fixed mindset who believe that they don't have the capacity to grow. Their skills, their attributes, their potential in life, it's fixed. They cannot change that. But on the opposite side of that coin, there's a group of people with a growth mindset who believe that they have an opportunity to grow through persistence, through grit, through effort, perseverance. They can grow beyond the means that they're at right now. And it was one of those books that completely just like it just flipped the script of my whole life, because just like you said, I started looking around of my close circle. I still have my same group of friends that I've hung out with in high school. I'm the only person who, reads these types of books. And I know that I embrace that. I live that. But at the same time, I'm not preachy. I'm not like, you guys really need to get into this book. You guys, need to, it's like, if you're into it, you are. If you're not, that's cool.
Yeah, if they that's sort of my approach on it. If they approach me about it, I'll open up. But if like I'm not going to say, hey, you need this, because as soon as you say that to someone, they clench up and we'll find all the reasons to not need that. The other thing too is I find that a lot of these books, like, there are some that are that could have been a blog post that it turns out to be a lot of filler space, and there's that, and I liken that to like the food industry, right? So there are people that are gluten intolerant, but then the food industry saw it and said, oh, we can market that. So then everyone became kind of like, oh, they're just marketing. It's just a marketing scam now. No, there are some people that they really have huge benefit from it, and need it. So a lot of people have saw, oh, there's money in self-development. So a lot of people are just throwing ideas and, remixing these books and just doing all the things to sell books. But there is so much gold out there. The other thing is they're maps. They're not going to do it for you. Right. So they're giving you the insight. You still have to take the action. So if someone reads the book and be like, I'm not rich now. I don't have 1 million subscribers now. Well, you have to follow the map, and most people don't even try to follow the map. Now, there's a video that you talk about, and it kind of touches on the subject, why self-help books aren't helpful. So let's go into a little bit of that. So the first myth is the more self-help books you read, the happier you'll be. Can you expand on that line?
Yeah, and that's just a continuation of what you just said, is that people are just pillaging the self-help space because they see it as a marketable opportunity. I mentioned in that video that a lot of these authors go into being an author because it's a branding ploy. Right? Like you can write a book, you can put it on your LinkedIn that you're a best-selling author, and then you can go on speaking tours. And I think that just depletes the whole value of the book, because your intentions aren't to write a book that helps someone. Your intentions are to write a book to help yourself. And there's a lot of books. You talk about books that could have been a blog post. I might ruffle a lot of feathers, but like I've been very vocal about Start With Why. Simon Sinek. It's a very, very popular book in the self-help space, but it's one of those books that I personally read, and I just was immediately repelled, because I was like, I don't agree with this. Like, I get the message, but the delivery was just like 5% value, 95% fluff. And I think that's just an example of what more and more authors are doing today, because of the fact that they know people they eat the self-help stuff up.
Yep. Totally. And I was going to ask you that. What self-help books? So you got Simon Sinek's on there, and I agree with you. I made it 2 paragraphs. I was like, oh, I get it. I get it. I don't need to read it. I watched the video. I'm good, bro. Yeah. Are there any other books that you want to ruffle some feathers about that could have been a blog post?
So I won't say that it's something that could have been a blog post, but there's one particular author that, he gets me a little riled up when I read his books. I get a little defensive. So there's Nassim Taleb. He is a brilliant, he's a trader, he's a philosopher, he's an author. He's one of these guys that is almost too smart for his own good. So when you read his books, you can immediately tell he is brilliant, but he's almost writing because he wants you to know how brilliant he is. So I think that there's a way that you can structure a book to provide value, like I was saying, but if you write it in the sense where it's like you're just doing it for validation, you want to puff your chest up, it's like, come on, dude. Like, I get it. You're smart. You peel back a little bit. Yeah. Come on, man.
What books? What's a book that he's written?
So he's got Anti-Fragile, which the concept itself it's brilliant. So the concept of anti-fragile is how normal stresses of life can build resiliency in systems. He talked a lot about the financial collapse, talked about, human bodies and weightlifting, like you're constantly stressing your body to build a resilient frame. But he talks about, there's the Black Swan. He just, I got one over here. Actually, it was recommended by Naval.
I can't wait to get into Naval.
Yeah, we'll talk about Naval. But yeah, Nassim Taleb, he's got a bunch of them. He's a brilliant guy. It's one of those authors that will challenge you. But peel back a little bit. I get it, bro. You're smart.
Yeah, I think I know. Like I've read books like that too, where I'm like, okay, this is cool, but I have a job, I have a side job, I got a wife. I'm not trying to read the whole thing. Tell me exactly what I need to do, and I'll do it. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of. I feel like there's a lot of health and fitness books, so I'm big into that space. Maybe I hear someone on a podcast talking about his diet regimen, and I'm like, oh, I want to learn more about that. I buy the book. I go right to like. I get it, bro. I go right to the chapter where it's like, this is the 4-week plan. Like, don't give me the whole lead up. I get that, like, at the beginning, you might need to know a little bit the why. Like, but if I trust you, like, I don't need all that. But he also needs that book to go on that podcast tour, that speaking tour, to get that presence for his brand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now you talk about you should create an action plan and one key takeaway. Sorry, I'm going to reword this. You talk about how I'm not even going to delete this out of the final episode. This is part of the process. All right. You say you create an action plan from one key takeaway from the book.
Yeah.
Is there an example that you can share, a takeaway that you've learned from a book that has directly affected how you approach your personal brand, Get Better with Books?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the most important books that I read last year, 2020, pandemic, lockdown, quarantine, was a book by Ryan Holiday called Stillness is the Key. And the premise of the book is how by proactively slowing down your life, it will provide more opportunity to think. And, the whole stillness, mindfulness aspect of life, it just brings you a little bit more internal peace. And it was something that, given 2020, it was very relevant, and it was something that I said, this is perfect for everything that's happening in the world right now. So there was one specific takeaway that I still do on a daily basis. It's journal. The book talks about going for walks, journaling, meditating, all these things that can kind of slow down your world. But journaling, ever since then, has been part of my daily routine. And the biggest takeaway that I've gotten from that is just the opportunity to clarify my thoughts. I'm someone who's, I'd say I'm more scatterbrained. I'm a little bit more of an abstract thinker. So when it comes down to like figuring out a linear plan or a linear path to my thoughts, I struggle with that. So putting my thoughts down on paper and actually identifying my thoughts, but questioning them a little bit, like, is this really how you feel? But okay. And kind of like piecing together my thoughts and ideas. Journaling is the mechanism that has just profoundly grown just how I think and becoming more of a critical thinker. So just identifying something and trying to implement it into your daily routine. I think that's my biggest recommendation to anyone who reads books is, don't just speed through it and get to the next one just to say that you've read it. Try to figure out how you can find at least one thing and implement it into your life.
Cool. And your journaling process, what does that look like? Is that every morning? You do that at night?
I try to do it every morning. So the past few months, I've really been focused on my morning routine. So I have my daughter, she turns 3 in September. I have thank you. I have twins on the way.
Whoa!
Hey!
Full house in here.
Full house.
Let's go.
So my free time is starting to dwindle, on both ends. So I've been very proactive about identifying times in my day. I'm a morning person. I like to get up early. I think better in the morning, but cultivating a time during the day where I can focus. And journaling was a staple to that morning routine where, just building some structure around the day and asking about the process. I really just, I spent a couple minutes doing some gratitude, things that I'm really grateful for my health, grateful for my family, grateful to be alive. But I ask one specific question every morning in the journal. I said, what needs to happen today to make this a great day?
Ooh.
What are
dude, I love it. I love talk about if you're pointed in the wrong direction, it doesn't matter how fast you're traveling. Yeah. So that is like an aligning, like that is a way of forcing you in the right direction.
Yeah.
Forcing you to answer that at the beginning, get the funk out of like the cobwebs out of your brain and focus on what matters now today for you.
Yeah, and it's just setting a good intention for the day. I've always, I don't know who told me this, could have been a relative, could have been a friend, but someone always told me great days start with great mornings. And when I start with journaling and asking that question, it just sets the intention of how can I make most use of this time. And it helps focus in on, what are the two or three things that will make this a really good day.
So I love the journaling. It's something that I also do too. It's I think there's a great quote. I say this often in my head, and I think I said it on another podcast I recorded. But someone said, "You don't write what you know. You write to figure it out what it is that you know." Yeah. And like sometimes journaling, like that's where the idea is. Like it's like puzzle I call it puzzle pieces for your ideas. So as you're journaling, this one can be moved down here, and like this little idea, and I don't know, it just helps me clarify like what it is I actually think about stuff. Actually seeing it tangible.
Another thing that before we move on to journaling, it's worth mentioning that I also use it just as a mechanism to remember. I've been very cognizant of the fact, I was talking to my wife about this last night. It was one of those times where we're like, man, we're getting older. We're getting older. So it's like, it's more important to preserve memories and to document and figure out where you are at certain stages in your life. Journal is an opportunity for me to just stamp out, how am I feeling right now? What's going on in my life? So, a year from now, 2 years from now, you can look back and be like, okay, I remember it. But you can also identify how much you've grown since then.
I love it. Yeah, a little snapshot of that moment. Now, you said Naval. I brought up Naval earlier.
Yes, sir.
I read Naval last year. I heard his podcast first, and I started like Googling everything. No, my friend sent me the tweet storm, and then like I found the podcast, and I started Googling like everything about this dude. And as someone that like spent a lot of my time working for other people, whether it's freelancing, whether it's a day job, there were so many things in that in what he teaches, these philosophies for creative minds, is what I feel like across a lot of industries that have been a major impact to me. And one of them was just the idea, I can't even pinpoint it to a specific line, but I've spent a lot of time building other people's audiences, right? So as creatives, as like photographers, as graphic designers, as video guys, as people that are building websites, everything we're doing is like helping other people build audiences. And like there's something that he said, I was like, wait, if you don't have an audience, you're building someone else's audience. Yep. You're getting paid, and that person has all the leverage. And it helped me think about leverage differently. Not that helping to build someone else's audience isn't a great thing. You learn a lot. It helps you to get money to go on the offense and build your own. So that was like a kind of like this moment that shifted how I think about where I should be putting my creative ideas. Are there any shifts that you developed as you were reading or studying Naval's work?
Yeah, there's several, and I had the same experience. I was a big fan of Joe Rogan. I still am, and it was just one of those random podcasts that you listen to, and I remember stopping. I'm like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? Yeah. Like, I feel like 10 times smarter having just listened to 45 minutes of this guy speak. Like I had the same experience, so I just looked into everything about him. And I listened to that podcast over and over. Like it was one of those things where it was almost like a manual, like it was a reference point. Yes. Because a lot of it was it was common sense. Well, not common sense, but like it made a lot of sense. Not common sense, it made a lot of sense. So it got to the point where his points about getting rich, I've always been focused on building personal wealth. I've been focused on investing. So the idea of leverage, but also building a business to leverage yourself, that was something that was something that I was doing with the Get Better with Books brand. But when he had mentioned, I said like, okay, this is something I need to double down on. And when he talks about productizing yourself and building a brand around that, permissionless media, all these things about building business around, scalability of media these days, that was just more reinforcement around, okay, I need to keep on this path because it is an extension of myself to productize, who you are and what you can value.
Yeah. He actually says a line about Joe Rogan in the book or in the podcast, whatever. The book is basically, how would you describe the book? It's like someone else kind of took his ideas and like or like interviewed him for the entire book?
Yeah, so the Almanac Naval Ravikant is basically just it's a manuscript of his different podcasts or his different tweets. It's like basically someone dictated everything that he talked about during his
organized
podcast.
it into chapters, sections that are like
three sections. There's the section on wealth creation, which is what we're talking about, leverage in business and making sure that you leverage that for your own personal gain. He has a section on happiness, and then he has a section on health, or there's three sections, happiness and health, or something like that. Anyways, if you hadn't read it, maybe it's a time for us to reread it again.
You're right. Well, it's one of those ones that you can pick up whenever. You can like hit a little section. You can hit 2 pages, and it can kind of ground you in sort of those principles that like can help direct your moves as a creator. The thing that he was talking about with Joe Rogan, he was like, what's fascinating about someone that is creating permissionless leverage like Joe Rogan, when he creates a podcast today, it is actually easier to create a podcast than it was the first day he started. Mm-hmm. Like he has the systems in place, he has the team, all he has to do is show up, but he makes a lot more money. So it's like it's this inverse relationship that this permissionless leverage of building a brand and being accountable and having he calls the robots of code like work for you. Yeah. So he posts it once. He's not working like the first time you're starting a podcast, you're like figuring out the branding. Like I think there's a clip of him online like trying to find like how to set it up, and he just looks doofy. That was so much harder to do than it is today, but he's making $100 million now as opposed to like $0 in that first day.
Yeah, he's not working any harder on his 1,000th episode than he is on his first.
Yeah. I think that was the Naval way of saying it.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what you mentioned about Naval? He speaks it in simple terms that you can understand. He's actually the opposite of what you talked about with the one author that tries to flex so hard and like show how smart he is. All Naval cares about is if you understand what he's saying. Yeah,
he has a great quote in the book that said, "All brilliant thinkers are clear thinkers." They can clearly articulate their thoughts, clearly articulate the value, and it's a skill. It's a skill that I try working on myself because I think I still have a little bit of room to grow there.
Totally, and I think he admits that sometimes. He was like, "Listen, these are like ideals. Like I'm still figuring this stuff out. A lot of the stuff that I talk about is because I had to go through it and learn it myself." Mm-hmm. What else? What else from Naval could a creator apply to their brand? So the certain chapters are, he has the wealth chapter.
There's one part at the end of the book that is something that even beyond business, even beyond creating had a huge impact, and that's just understanding that our experiences, our lives, they're so short. In a couple hundred years and in 200 years, no one's going to know anything about us, about our families. So keep that in mind. Use that in perspective when you're thinking about creating something. You're putting out a new piece of content. You're trying something a little bit different, but you're maybe hesitant. You're like, I don't know how people are going to react to this. Is this cringe? Like
at the end of the day, that comes from it. Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's like, who really cares? People probably won't really care as much as you think. And that's kind of like the cynical way I think about it. The whole spotlight effect. You think that everyone's watching and everyone's critiquing you. But in reality, people are all focused on their own shit. So at the end of the day, it's just like, don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah, people are swiping through their phones in the line at the grocery store. Like they don't care about your 30 seconds. Like that's something that's helped me get over some of the overthinking around my content, especially when we're making short videos. Like people are like, all right, go to the next, like whatever. Like I wasted 20 seconds on this goober in the red sweatshirt. Something that he talks about too on that show, on that podcast, is something that like I didn't understand how to put it in words. Like what he's brilliant at doing is putting things that like make sense to you already in words. So you can it's like holding up a mirror to like being able to like analyze these ideas even further. The one is how relationships compound. And I was like, what does that mean? And then it started to hit me. So I started in the music industry. And when I started, everyone else that was around me was just starting. But I didn't really have that much talent, but I was a relationship guy. Like I would meet everyone in the room. It just out of the genuineness, I was genuinely interested in these people. And eventually, like these people that like one person was an intern that was it. I remember the front row in the at a show, and then like later became an intern and like was like a total fan. Like an intern was someone in the industry, and then now she's like the head of A&R at a monster publishing company, and like that's 10 years later, right? And that scenario has happened with dozens of people that I met. So the compounding relationships, I think he says like align yourself with people that have like high integrity and like high intelligence. And he was like, after 10 years, as their world compounds, so does your world, because the bigger they get, like the bigger your relationship gets. And it's like and not to look at it in a selfish way, but like, I mean, who you align yourself with now, where are they going to be in 5 years? Like I believe, this podcast, I'm able to develop relationships with people like you that I think are just going to continue to grow and become massive impacts on people's lives with the content you create. So how do you think about that, like when it comes to building relationships?
It's something that I see in my day job all the time. So outside of the whole brand creator, I'm trained in sales. I've been in enterprise sales for my entire career, and it's something that I see 100%. And I think the quote is, he says, build play long-term games with long-term people, right? Like, and that's how you can trust people, is how long they've been doing what they do. And it's something that I see in my day job. I've been working with Joe Schmo for 2 weeks. I don't really know what he's all about, but Brad over here, I've been working with him for 4 years. I know what he's all about. I know his integrity. I can trust him, and it's that trust that enables us to work quickly and a little bit more efficiently. Whereas someone who I don't really know, I don't really trust, you kind of have to go through those barriers and that steps. And when it comes to the whole creator ecosystem, it's something that I've really been slow to adopt, because I've been in this initial mindset where I'm going to go at everything myself. Like I don't have a team. I don't have anybody.
It's all you.
Me. It's all me. I'm doing all my own content, doing all my editing, doing all the platforms. I got my own books and everything like that. And maybe it's a detriment to that in terms of like expanding my network internally, or maybe building a team. I maybe haven't grown as quickly, but I've tried to keep my circle small. But as I'm starting to grow on the different accounts, I'm starting to do more things like this, more podcasts, and establish these relationships. And I've built more relationships with authors. And over the past 18 months, I've built some great relationships with publishers and publishing houses. And it's that initial apprehension that has kind of warmed up a little bit, and saying like, hey, listen, I need to establish more of these relationships. It's paid off tenfold. And it's something where I was like, I should have been doing this years ago. But that's just who I am as a person. I'm a little bit more reserved. It takes a little while for me to build trust with people. But once I do, it's like, hey, let's get it.
And in a way, you've been doing something that Naval talks about, is building, is the best way to network is to build. So you've been building your brand publicly. And as a result of that, it attracts like-minded individuals into your world, and then like the loop kind of compounds from there. You start to create with these other people, more opportunity comes, and you just keep building publicly, and then you attract more like-minded people, and it kind of keeps going from there.
Exactly.
Now, I want to ring off a couple books, and I want to know something that I need to know from these books, because I haven't read them.
Okay.
So one is Flow States. What is one thing I need to know from that book?
So the concept of flow, if we start there, is just any activity that while you're doing it, you lose track of time. So that could be a creative endeavor. It could be, working on spreadsheets. It could be exercising. And the main tenet behind that is that during these flow states, that is arguably the most enjoyable experiences that we can have as a human being. So the biggest takeaway that I got from that book is, number one, identify the experiences in your life that create those flow states, and try to proactively create more of them in your daily routine. So here's an example. I truly enjoy the content creation process, meaning taking a bunch of pictures in my book, uploading it into, my Lightroom app on Adobe, making the edits and creating a caption. Like I really enjoy that process, in which I lose track of time when I do it. So that is, the actual flow state. So it's something where if I can carve out time every single day in my life to do more of these things that create this optimal enjoyment experience, I'm going to have a better life. I'm going to have a better day. I'm going to be a happier, more fulfilled person. So I think that's really the epitome of flow, is find something that induces that flow state and just do more of it.
And arguably, you're going to have better output too, and make more impact on the world at the same time. So it's like, a lot of people, the old mindset of just, oh, you just got to slug it out and do everything, do it, make everything happen, right? But if you're spending more time in your genius zones, in those areas that really give you energy, you're going to give more to the world, because you're just going to have more output. Like just by the theory itself, just you're going to be able to focus on more and create better, and the world's going to be a better place as a result. So here's a question: the Goggins book. What's the title of the Goggins book?
Can't Hurt Me.
Can't Hurt Me. What does a creator need to know from God? Like, he's intense to get into. Is there like one thing that I need to know from that book?
The one thing that you need to know from that book is that most of the challenges that happen in life are internal challenges. A lot of the adversity that goes on in your life, obviously there's external circumstances that suck, but a lot of that translates into inner turmoil. And I think the biggest takeaway that Goggins gives us is that if you can create more of a resilient and gritty mindset, you can evolve beyond these challenges. You can adapt to them. You can say, listen, like, I got a flat tire, like, screw it. Like, I know how to fix that. I've had a shitty morning. I can have a better afternoon. It's just having that resiliency is something that you can work on. You can build grit by doing things that challenge you.
Let's get into green lights. What does Matthew McConaughey, what makes him such a great storyteller?
I think his method of communication is just such a disarming. He's such a disarming, charismatic guy that you just, he's someone that you talk to or listen to and you're just like, man, like, he makes me feel good. He's just, he's one of those guys that you can tell he's authentic, but he's humble. He's someone who's literally seen the heights of success, and he's someone who understands the journey. He knows that he came from nothing. He knows that he made a lot of mistakes in life, but he's someone, and this is really the biggest takeaway that I got from Matthew McConaughey, is like, when we're all going through these growth experiences, there's a lot of self-doubt, there's a lot of what ifs, and, you're like, I don't know if this is going to work out. But he was one who always emphasized the fact that, like, trust your instincts, trust your gut. If this is something that really nourishes you, it's like, you got to go after it, because, like, what's the alternative? Something that's not going to fulfill you. It's like, do it.
And his storytelling, I think his attention to detail. Knowing the one story where he's talking about wrestling the guy in that village,
yeah,
you're brought into it through his detail. He's like his chin. I put my chin on his clavicle, like the sweat was mixing. Like he like goes like, what the temperature is. What he was wearing. Like, you feel like you're like in that fight with him and you're seeing it. Okay, now let's move into, let's kind of wrap it up here. The next platform you're going on, I see you on YouTube now. You're on TikTok. You're on the Instagram was your main hub for a couple years. In a year from today, what is something that you're most proud of that you've accomplished with your brand?
I think this has to do with more of the commercial aspect of it. And we talked about this in the beginning, where 100% of my content was jabs. I'm getting into the stage where I'm building some right hooks right now. So I have an email newsletter that I just rolled out recently, kind of did a beta launch on that. So I got a couple hundred email subscribers. I've done a lot of research that the email newsletter business, it's big right now. There's a lot of popular newsletters, and it's something that's very low-hanging fruit that you can get going. But I'm actually in the process of building out a morning journal. So we talked about, like, the journaling process. I struggled with this a lot, because, like, I knew I wanted to sell a product, but I wanted to make sure it was authentic to me, authentic to my brand. but it was something that I do personally. So not just like I'm selling something I think it's going to help. No, it's like something that I do personally that I know it's going to help other people. And notebooks are nothing new. There's a billion notebooks out available. So I'm thinking, how could I differentiate myself? And I'm in the process of building out a morning journal around those prompts that I had mentioned. How can I start my morning, start my day with intention and purpose, and really just building a structure around that.
I love that. So that'll be those two ways are kind of the next steps in how you're going to monetize your brand and kind of make this like a full circle business for Get Better with Books and continue to inspire people.
Yeah, continue to grow the Instagram page, still collaborating with a lot of authors. I think that's my main source of income from the brand right now, is just through advertising and promotions through authors, doing a couple of those per month. It's something that there's a fine line, there's a balance. I think there's a lot of accounts that are so reliant on promotions, and I think it takes away from your whole message. I think it dilutes your value when you just commercialize the shit out of your account. So it's a fine line, but promotions, some products, and I'm trying to grow my YouTube to the point where I can start monetizing that as well. So just having a couple streams.
Awesome. So working with the authors is basically, it's like a brand deal, but you help promote their book.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a book brand deal.
Books are just authors and publishers just reach out and say, "Hey, let me promote my book," and I say, "All right, here's my rate card. Like, let me know what you think."
Yo, bro, that's the most beautiful lifestyle business. Like, and I know it's so funny. Like, we see the top. Like, we see what you publish, and there's so much work going into the process of getting it to where it is. So, thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing some of that process.
Absolutely.
And we're excited for the next steps in your brand. So, where can we find you?
Instagram at Get Better with Books, YouTube Get Better with Books. I'm on TikTok right now. Also check out my website if you want to sign up to my weekly newsletter, getbetterwithbooks.com.
Go get that newsletter. I feel like we'll have a lot of fun conversations like this in the future.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much for being on, and have a wonderful day, my man.
Appreciate it, Tom.